Hello, my name is Sophie Gleitzman and I'm a naturopath and a herbalist based outside of Sydney, Australia. I've got a couple of questions for you. Do you ever feel like a different person from one week to the next? Are there times that you love people, you want to be social, you want to see everybody, and other times where you want to snuggle in, avoid, keep it quiet? Are there particular days where you just can't control being reactive to your kids, your partner, maybe your mum? Me too. And I used to beat myself up about this inconsistency and how it was inconvenient that my gut feelings or the way I just was on any given day wouldn't fit in with the life that I had planned for that day. But things have been changing for me, and I'm curious to see if they might change for you too. So, imagine if you had a map to guide you through each month in your life to predict where you might be at your most productive, where you might need some more support with the household load, where you might enjoy a busy social calendar, or where you might need to take it slower and be more gentle with yourself. I'm discovering that this map exists and it's called Menstrual Cycle Awareness. So, menstrual cycle awareness is exactly what it sounds. It's tuning into our period, essentially tuning into when our period happens, when it ends, when we come through the kind of fertile phase, which leads to ovulation, and then when we come through our premenstrual phase, leading back to the next period. That's a really simple architecture to what the menstrual cycle is, but this is a map that unlocks the wisdom and creative potential of the menstrual cycle. It's about tuning into our strengths and sensitivities at the different times in the cycle, the pattern of abilities that emerges as we move through each week, each phase. And it's an invitation to embrace the inconsistency, because the inconsistency is what brings these different powers. I'm realizing that it's okay to feel different at different times in the month, different from one week to the next, because there are different versions of me that have strengths and power in those different stages. And I want to talk to you about it because it's making me feel so much better about my life. It's helping me tune into, almost what to do each week. Of course, there's a whole lot of stuff that I don't have a choice about. I have a 2-year-old son, I have a marriage, I have a house, I have a job, etc. I'm not, sitting alone in a cave being able to plan my whole life. But this framework is partly about understanding this reactivity and being a bit more gentle with myself about the times that it's happening and maybe why it's happening, but it's also permission to tune into my needs at each point in the cycle. And for me, this is a path to greater self-kindness, and I'm realizing that self-kindness is actually self-care. Self-care doesn't have to be about, yes, I've meditated today and I've been to yoga and those things are brilliant, but in an overarching sense, I can carry with me through every hour of the day a sense of self-understanding and therefore self-kindness, which informs my ability to care for myself. So, who am I? I am Sophie Gleitzman and I'm a naturopath, and I've actually been on maternity leave for a couple of years while I've been home with my son. But when I was in my clinical practice doing a lot of work with women's hormones and menstrual cycles that were missing or that were unpredictable, women coming off hormonal birth control, and I absolutely loved that work. But this emotional and spiritual aspect to what our menstrual cycle means to us was quite quite absent from that work. It was much more about what the body was doing, what the blood tests were showing, what herbal medicines and nutrients and excellent interventions could help. And I wish I could go back in time actually to myself a few years ago and give myself this knowledge. This feels like a missing piece to the puzzle that I think would help so many, like really, I think all women would benefit from this information. The other thing that I'm realizing is I gave myself a pretty hard time when I was in my clinical practice about my inconsistency, about how from week to week, I just didn't feel the same in my professional role. You know, one week I'd be feeling fantastic interacting with clients. It would feel, you know, it would flow, it would come really naturally. I'd feel like, oh, I've got all the energy for this. I can see all these clients in one day, that's fine. And then the next week, or, you know, maybe 2 weeks later, I would be completely different, no energy, feeling drained, dreading actually that I was going to go and perform that role. But I wasn't listening to myself. I was noticing that that was happening. I was feeling the overwhelm that comes with trying to put myself in a situation that just didn't feel right. But I was trying to force myself to do it. I had this sense that I should be doing it, that consistency was an important part of my professional role. And that led to a lot of really self-critical thinking. And I thought I was the problem. I'm not cut out for this work. You know, I'm too sensitive to be in this role. And I haven't gone back to that clinical practice role yet, but when I do, I'm going to approach it a little bit differently. And what I want to bring is some of this knowledge about the different strengths and abilities through my month, and how I can then maybe tailor my work, because that is my own business. I can tailor my work to try to fit in, to take advantage of those. I'm going to talk more about this because I keep kind of mentioning these particular, you know, strengths and abilities, but I want to go into detail. And that's essentially what I want to cover in this presentation. I'm not trying to sell you anything. It's December and I feel like everyone's trying to sell me something, but actually I just feel like this is great information to share. So menstrual cycle awareness can be as simple as noticing when you've got your period, and to be honest, we all do that. But do you put it in an app? Do you note it in your diary? Do you make a note maybe then of, okay, my cycle's usually this many days, I'll count ahead to put a little star when I think my next period might be coming. I am coming to see that our menstrual cycle, our monthly cycle, so from day one of the period through to day one of the next period, that's what I mean when I say the cycle. I'm exploring more deeply beyond that kind of tracking of what's going on with the bleed and the end of the bleed. And I'm seeing our menstrual cycle kind of like an in-breath and an out-breath. And actually, there's a nice metaphor here, because when you breathe, one always follows the other. You take your in-breath and then eventually you have to come to the out-breath. And then you're ready for the next in-breath. And you don't get to just keep breathing in forever. You have to breathe out. You have to have the balance. So the in-breath, the energy of that is like expansion, turning outwards, filling up with possibility and rising energy. And that's sort of the feeling of the first part of our cycle, you know, maybe coming through the first few days of your bleed, coming through then to where your period's stopping. There is a rising energy and a sense of like, okay, that period's behind me, I'm opening back up, I'm coming out again. And that's the in-breath, I think, to the point of ovulation. Ovulation is around the middle of your cycle. There's a couple of ways to tell that it's happening, but say in an average 28-day cycle, which is by no means everybody's cycle, ovulation's around day 12 to 14-ish, probably day 14. It really depends. But say from that halfway point in the cycle, you've breathed in, you've come out, everything's opening, and then you've got to start to exhale again. The out breath brings you back into yourself, slows you down, brings you back to your home base. And then you've got to inhale again. So this is kind of a physical way to explore what I've been realizing through some fantastic resources, which I'll share with you, could be considered like the psycho-spiritual dimensions of the menstrual cycle. And a concept that has really resonated with me is this idea of the seasons, that we move through the seasons in our month, in our cycle. And I'll share some resources at the end, which are essentially the kind of practitioners and thinkers and authors who have shaped where I've got to at this point so far. And I always like to go back and see where people have got their ideas, so I hope you will too. My personal challenge has been how to make this wisdom relevant in my current role as a mother, where I have a young child with all the needs, and I don't get to, really carve out time for myself, in the way that I did before I had kids, for example. But I'm realizing, and this goes for every woman in whatever situation, you might have an incredibly demanding job, you might have other family structures and situations that call on you a lot, you might have a relationship that needs a lot of tending to. I think everything that I want to share now, as far as what to be thinking about, what to be tuning into, what your body's trying to tell you, you can adjust your expectations for how much of this can impact on you, or how much of this you can dive into at any one time. For me, it's kind of been a slow drips and breadcrumbs of ideas, and seeing people speaking about this and realizing that I could resonate with these ideas. And now I'm kind of diving in head first, and I want to make this a priority in my life. So I think it's something that evolves, and I think each person will have their personal journey with it. So let's explore a bit more deeply the seasonality of the menstrual cycle. This is where I want to dig into the strengths and sensitivities of each phase. Think, I guess, as the menstrual cycle is like 4 weeks. It's not always perfectly 4 weeks, but say it's 4 weeks. Week 1 is when you have your period. Week 2 is the week in between your period and ovulation. At that halfway point at the end of week 2 is ovulation. And then you've kind of got 2 weeks until you've got your next period happening. So here's some more questions. How do you feel when you have your period? Think not just about your body, but maybe your mind, your emotions, and your spirit. What's your energy? What's your connection or disconnection like when you have your period? Because this is the winter phase in our inner seasons. So think of the inner winter. And I'm doing this because I've been doing a bit of hashtagging on Instagram, the inner winter. So this is menstruation, which is our period. Think of it as kind of day 1 to 5-ish of your cycle. The core things that for me characterize this season are this sense of being turned quite inward. I really want to curl up on the couch and stare out the window. I want to snuggle something. I don't get to necessarily. Maybe I get to for 5 minutes, and then I've got to get up and, stop my son from climbing the shelves again. But still, it's that sense that I can tune into in my body of like, oh, this is just what I want to do. And even if I can do it for 5 minutes, or 5 minutes every couple of hours, or 1 hour, one blissful hour in the day, or the whole day, then that would be brilliant. I am definitely reactive at this time. I'm realizing that the needs of others are particularly draining at this time. It's like I kind of I have needs, and I need to tune into myself. So when other people are like, nah, I'm finding that quite draining in this inner winter. And I think I'm seeking solitude, peace, and freedom from the demands of others. The core needs of the inner winter seem to be rest, even if it's just for an hour. It's time to rest and restore, to let go, to delegate, to, if your partner comes over and says, hey, maybe I could take little Johnny for a walk, say, yeah, that'd be awesome. And then instead of jumping into the housework or whatever, sit down, snuggle something, stare out the window. Be gentle with yourself and others, and maybe lower your expectations for parenting, for partnering, for professionaling, whatever it is that you need to just let go of a little bit and say no to, and accept that you're perhaps not going to be at your most potent energy wise. Now, the inner winter, when you've got your period, is the time to just loosen and soften and accept for this couple of days, it's your call to rest. It's probably not a great time to start anything challenging. You might want to limit social interactions. If socializing is unavoidable, again, you could lower your expectations, seek out, more one-to-one interactions, make sure they're with people you find really nourishing, someone you can be honest with and say, oh, I'm bleeding. I just kind of need to be a bit like this. And go to places which feel good for you. It might feel really good to go to the beach, be connected to nature, kids are there, families there, whatever, but as long as you feel good in the place, then it will help to nourish. The overarching thing is that when we have our period, we are allowed to listen to our needs. It's kind of like, to not be too crass, it's sort of like a red flag for your body saying, hey, this is time for a bit of downtime, time for a bit of rest. Push through if you want to, but I'm realizing that my body's kind of calling me to rest at this time. So it just fits as, if we've got this in-breath, out-breath flow, it's the epitome of the out-breath. It's the bottom of the out-breath where we're just resting. It's all going to wake back up again, don't worry. If you let go and unwind, you can trust that it will all come back up and you will be able to pick it back up. I promise. So, how do you feel the week after your period, when that crazy, 5 days or whatever it is, 3 days, 7 days, when that time is finished and you start to emerge again, you start to kind of wake back up and your energy lifts. This is the spring phase. So the inner spring is the week after your period, leading up to ovulation. I'm realizing, and I think the kind of core feeling here is an increasing enthusiasm and focus. In particular, if you've been able to take some rest and downtime while you're bleeding, this can be a really awesome shift then of like, okay, cool. I've refilled my cup, I've refueled my tanks. Let's go through this again. Let's open up and see what's possible this next month. I'm finding definitely it's about increasing focus and maybe some clarity, like waking up into a new cycle and going, yeah, wow, okay, this is the thing I want to do. This is the thing I want to kind of be a bit like exploratory with. I want to think creatively about this project, or I'd never thought about doing this way before, but hey, like, let's spend a couple of days just researching amongst all the other things in life, but in my kind of free moments, let's put some energy into researching this other kind of potential idea. It seems to be about curiosity, creativity, and certainly an increasing capacity for the needs of others. Thinking about the parenting role here, and more tolerance, more patience. This is a lovely time, actually, this inner spring, to kind of slow down to the pace of the children in your life and sort of see things from their perspective, to bring that curiosity and playfulness to a couple of days. This is definitely a time to get excited about a new direction, maybe a new project or a goal, and to make some time for planning and preparation towards that. So I'd say the core needs here in this week after your period are some headspace to dream, plan, and create. But it seems to be helpful to keep your cards close. So this isn't the time to tell everybody about what you're excited about, but to really enjoy the possibility and the freedom from any expectation or any kind of concrete questioning, but to just go a little bit wild with your creativity. So I think it's also a great time to get outdoors, to stretch and move, to bring some physicality back after maybe resting for a while with your period, to be more professionally productive in a kind of contained way. I had a real sense after resting quite deeply with my last period, around even like day 4, I was like, right, I'm back, let's do this. And I had this kind of rise of energy, but I was thinking, okay, ovulation's like quite a few days away. I'm day 4, I'm probably not going to ovulate until like day 12, 13, I think I need to like resist this urge to like dive back in and actually just pace myself. So resist the urge to speed up too quickly and instead listen to your body. And if your body's saying, cool, I've got some energy. Oh no, actually I need to sit back down with a cup of tea. Cool, do that. It's totally all right to pace through this inner spring. It's like there's this emergence, but it's slow. And then do you know when you're ovulating? One, I'm not going to go into it in a huge amount of detail here. I have lots of colleagues and practitioner recommendations, and there's going to be some in the resources at the end around, how to really dig into your fertility awareness, which is partly about knowing when you're ovulating. But a really clear way is if you notice your different vaginal discharges, we call it cervical mucus. The cervical mucus that indicates that ovulation is on the way is the slippery, clear, stretchy egg white stuff. So you might see it from, even a week after you stop bleeding, or within that week. It depends on how long your cycle is. And then you'll notice it, or you should, over a number of days, and it kind of increases, leading up to ovulation. So think of ovulation as the kind of 5-ish days. Again, it's tricky to predict until you really get to know your body. But so we've thought about around 5 days of your inner winter, which is your period, around another week-ish of your inner spring, and now we're into kind of the 3rd week of your cycle-ish, and that's when you're likely going to ovulate, and we're calling this your inner summer. So this is when you're fertile, by the way, so that's a whole other thing to be aware of. I mean, there's other fertile points through the cycle, but this is the kind of key point as far as trying to get pregnant. So the feeling here is like summer. It's like everything is just opening up, joy, celebration, energy is up. Everything kind of comes together. It's like, yeah, I could do that. Sure, let's do that. Let's like sit down and, plan out what we're going to do for the next 5 years. Let's, dig in for a couple of hours and kind of get really focused and excited about a project. Let's have a quick party. Let's, quickly organize a party for blah, blah's, whatever birthday. For me, it's kind of a sense that anything's possible, if only for a few days. And I think there's a drive to express yourself, to be heard, to be seen, to be desired. This is a time of sensuality and confidence, which is beautiful, considering that it's also a time that your body wants you to make babies. The core need here seems to be, again, time to work, create, share, achieve, and connect. This is an excellent time to start projects, to bring them up to fruition, to implement change, personal change, or stuff that's happening as a family, to stay up a bit later, to work a bit harder, to tackle some new routines if you've got young children and you want to shift things up a bit. Book in the play dates, go to the parties, rejoice in the social connections. It's a good time professionally for interviews, meetings, presentations. Yes, I'm ovulating right now. Not like right this second, but I am in my inner summer. And parenting might come more easily. I'm feeling that this week. It's like I've got more space. I've got all the space for the needs of others. I'm not really tuned into kind of my deep internal world. It's much more outward focusing. I'm at like the height of the in-breath. And I've kind of got the energy to go with the flow, to kind of hold everything in flow. The catch of the inner summer, and I have to watch that over the next few days, there will be a shift. There will be a shift when we've inhaled all we can possibly inhale, and then we have to start exhaling. And this high energy life won't be sustainable, and it won't feel right anymore. It can feel really, it can be really tantalizing to just keep pushing on. It's fine. I've got so much done this week. Let's just do another busy week. But my understanding here and my personal experience is that if you keep pushing on, you might crash. Something will end up popping up to say, no, we need to exhale now. And this shift in energy becomes kind of palpable over a few days. So listen for it. Again, allow your body to tell you what's happening, and give yourself the permission to listen, to tune into what you need. And that's the point, to begin creating some space in the calendar and maybe say no to some stuff. And again, to listen to your own needs. Because inevitably we will come to the week before your next period. Could be a week or longer. And we all know this is our premenstrual time, but in the flow of the seasons, this is the autumn phase. The inner autumn is the premenstrual week, or it could be longer. This is such an interesting time, and I have had so much difficulty with this week in the past. So my challenge is to, really create space for what is, I know, coming over the next couple of weeks, because I'm mid-cycle now. The core feeling here, I think, is the focus shifts from this outward, everything's cool, I'm connecting, everything's wonderful, and then there is a recalibration back to an inner focus. And with that comes heightened emotions, heightened anxiety, heightened self-criticism, and heightened intuition. Like maybe less tolerance for BS, less tolerance for, not total honesty. Like, I'm realizing that part of the way PMS manifests for me is like with some brutal honesty, where I say stuff that maybe I wouldn't have said at another point in the month, but I'm suddenly like, no, this is the way I see things. Clarity, right? And I think the core needs for this time, this week before the bleed, this inner autumn, I think one of the things is self-kindness. This is where we're really challenged to accept all the nuances that are coming up from inside ourselves, and to meet them with understanding and kindness. I think a journal is really helpful here, like writing down every day at the end of each day, like, oh, this is all the stuff that came up, this is how I reacted. Maybe having some people in your life who are really good listeners, but maybe you don't want to kind of share this process outwardly always. It can be kind of, a bit of a solo mission. But if you've got good listeners, maybe, other friends who are kind of savvy to this, inner process, to these inner seasons, and we can sit down together and go, ugh, inner autumn, let's talk it out. And maybe an understanding partner, family, let people know, let people in your life know, this is a week where I'm going to turn inwards a bit. I'm going to process some stuff. I'm going to try not to be too reactive. But if I am, just know that's where I'm at. And pretty soon I'll bleed, and then I'll come back around, and everything will shift and change again. I think the inner autumn is about taking each day as it comes, about reflecting, processing, journaling. I'm exploring the value of taking a breath before I react, of realizing that something's come up and I just want to say that thing, but I don't have to. I can take a breath, I can kind of mull on it. Maybe there's going to be another way to express that thing. This does seem to be about holding space for yourself, as you would your child, to allow some space for yourself to kind of recognize what's coming up rather than dismissing it as PMS. Oh, I'm just premenstrual, I'm just hormonal, whatever. Like, actually, no, okay, today this happened and that's how I felt, and okay, it's interesting. Again, we don't have to be like, whoa, reacting like, why did I feel that way? You can kind of note it down, like, okay, that's interesting, that came up. This is all easier said than done, of course, but still, let's, create the space. I mean, the opportunity in this week is to open up our shadows, in a sense, and let go of what's not needed. This could be a time of editing, refining, clearing out. You might be actually doing this in your house in this premenstrual week. It could happen in all areas of your life. It really is, I think, an opportunity for recalibration, but it's going to require space, time, and permission to explore. There's an idea that Claire Baker, who's a writer on this topic who I'll share in the resources. She shared this idea of an autumn list, which I love. So just making a note, I'm just going to add that on my autumn list. All the ways, things are pissing you off or your needs aren't being met, all of this might come up in this premenstrual week, because particularly in the inner summer, like, I'm not really caring about my needs right now. I'm doing other stuff, I'm getting it done, and I'm kind of loving the outward flow. But in another week's time, I might be pissed that, this thing happens all the time between me and someone in my life. So the autumn list is a place to just note it down. You're going on my autumn list. Don't necessarily act on it in the moment, though, because I feel like this is a time where stuff's coming up and it's churning and there's criticism and there's this brutal intuition, but maybe it's not the best time to actually, make the change or process it. That I think that's going to be later in the cycle. It's sort of, there will be wisdom to guide how to process the items on the autumn list in the phases to come and to come and to come. So we're at the end of autumn. We're back to the first day of the bleed. Oh, thank God, the bleed. I have always heard women talk about how the bleed is such a relief, and I'm getting that on a number of levels now. I don't know if you feel that way too, but I've certainly heard a lot of women talk about that. And it's the cycle coming home again to the bottom of the out breath. Another bleed, another inner winter, and then the whole thing starts again. And what blows my mind is that we go through, even if we're not really conscious of it, even if it's not happening in that, textbook predictable sense, there is the capacity for all of this every month, for this entire emotional, spiritual, physical process of transformation, evolution, in and out breath, every freaking month. Like, that's amazing. Has this impacted you even a fraction of how much it's impacting me? Because I'm pretty excited, and I'd love to hear if it has. I'll give you my email at the end. Feel free to let me know if this is exciting you, and I'm on Instagram. And yeah, I just want us to be talking about this. I want this to be part of our, conversations together and with the people in our lives. That, oh yeah, yeah, I'm in my inner autumn, so stuff's, there's kind of a lot going on. And yeah, just turning inwards a bit. And also I would love to see, the people in my life using this framework as a way to better understand the parts of themselves that they find difficult, and to better understand when things don't feel okay. Like, I know there can be a whole lot more going on when things don't feel okay, but I feel like this is a framework. This is it's sort of like someone outside you saying it's totally okay to feel like this. Yeah. So in reality, things probably won't look exactly like this. You might not feel exactly the way I've just described all of those seasons feel. And the goal isn't to somehow get to the place where that is your life. The goal is to learn about yourself and to learn what your cycle looks like and what it feels like. So tracking is the way to do this. I'm finding, I've used like a period tracker app, just a free one, for a long time, and that's been helpful for cycle length and whatever, and it gives me a sense, on a little calendar, that I can see like, oh, okay, I'm bleeding, maybe I'm bleeding here. Obviously with all of those tracker apps, be really careful placing too much like truth in the predictions, particularly the predictions of when ovulation is going to happen. An app needs to know a lot about you and your kind of all different kind of signs and symptoms to really accurately be able to predict ovulation. In fact, yeah, there's only a few I think that do it really well. The goal is to just get a sense of where you're at through your month, even if you jot it down in your, appointments diary, like cycle day blah, I think just keeping a journal is really helpful. Like, date at the top, cycle day, blah, some stuff I felt today. There's another cute thing that I've seen people talk about where you draw like a grid. So you've got 4 squares. And so over 4 cycles, you come back to each grid as a day. So you'd end up going day, cycle day 4 of this month, day 4 of this month, day 4 of this month, day 4 of this month. So eventually you've got 4 day 4s to compare, because you might note that there are certain things that you feel on certain days of the cycle. So some combination of that, but even just giving yourself the, kind of broad knowledge that there can be shifts and changes in how you're going to feel on a lot of different levels throughout your cycle. You might note, like, next time you're like, oh man, I feel awesome and I've got all these ideas and shmeh, you might be like, oh yeah, I'm day 12. How interesting. All right, and I'll talk about a couple of resources at the end that can dig into it a bit more. So I'm going to conclude with another little overview. Think of this as a guide to tuning into the wisdom of the cycle. So the inner winter, your task is to listen to your body and soul and emotions and needs, and you listen to yourself. The inner spring, as you start to emerge, listen to your curiosity and your creativity. The inner summer, listen to your call to action. There will be something that you just want to do that month. You just want to achieve, or you just want to, you want to express. That is going to be your call to action for that month. And we get to do it every month. And then your inner autumn, as you close back in a bit, listen to your intuition and what your gut is telling you. So the overarching message that I'd love you to take away from everything I've just said is that it is okay to trust yourself, to listen to your body and what it's telling you, and to embrace your cyclical nature. Because I think that self-understanding is our path to self-kindness, and that's the best kind of self-care. And I'd love to share some resources with you. So please reach out if this has excited you and you, please reach out if this has excited you and you want to talk about it more, because I'd really like to talk about it more. Also, if this has sparked any kind of interest for you as far as wanting to know more, wanting to take this further, here are some people to dig into. So I've got a fantastic colleague, Clara, who used to go by Bitcom, but she's Bailey now, Clara Bailey. She's on Instagram, but she also has, she's a naturopath, and she also has a website where she has put together, I think it might still be available on her site, a fantastic little quick overview of these seasons, digging into a bit more of the naturopathic perspective, what's actually going on physiologically in the menstrual cycle, some herbs and things that can assist each phase. It's called Cycle Alchemy. The book that I've just read, which has totally blown my mind and changed my life, is Wild Power. I think it should be on every woman's Christmas list. It's by Alexandra Pope and Sjanie, Hugo, Wurlitzer, and their kind of creation together is Red School, and they're at redschool.net. But this book, Wild Power, oh my God, it's just awesome. And then Claire Baker is another practitioner who is on Instagram, who posts about stuff, kind of interesting little breadcrumbs that have been part of what's led me to this. She's put together a really great ebook called Adore Your Cycle. And then Lara Bryden is one of my colleagues, one of my fantastic friends, and she was my mentor for a long time. I would say will always be my mentor. She's a fantastic naturopath. She's written an excellent book called The Period Repair Manual, and she is my number one go-to for just women's health support and understanding your menstrual cycle concerns from a range of from a naturopathic perspective. Clara Bailey, actually, I meant to say, has some brilliant blog posts, one of which I found incredibly informative around all of the different period tracking apps. And she is a fertility awareness method practitioner as well. So these are just some excellent people to dig into. This is my email and my website, and let's connect if this has really excited you. But really, I just want you to go forth and use this knowledge to the best of your abilities to make this something which nourishes your life. Okay, thank you so much. It's been fantastic to interact with you today. And I will look forward to connecting with you guys soon. Thank you. Couldn't work out how to stop it then. I think we're good.